Jazzcast Pros.
In today's episode, I really like this trend that I saw from a couple people of ins and outs for the year. My ins that I'm bringing into 2025 with me, outs what I'm leaving in 2024. Some of them are business. I'll start with the business ones, but then this is high vibe. So we're a little woo-woo around here. And so it wouldn't be an episode if it didn't have a little woo-woo in there. So let's get into my ins and outs of 2025. Welcome to High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the current or aspiring solopreneur, navigate the messy middle so you can make both an income and an impact. Hi, I'm Rashawn, and I love creating safe spaces for women to be courageous in their dreams. I have been doing some thinking about what I want to talk about this quarter, this year. If there's anything that you want to hear about on the podcast, please message me on Instagram. If you're listening to this in Spotify, you can leave comments on the episode, which is really cool. Or you can email me. I would love to hear what you want to hear more about. Okay, so my word for the year, I've been thinking about this a lot, and my word for the year is impactful. My word for the year last year was bloom. This year it is impactful, and I want to be very intentional about the impact that I'm having on a day-to-day basis. And so last year was all about grounding activities and, being planted in the right soil. Like this year I'm selling my sales course, which I'm very excited about. I have prospecting power hours that are a part of that. So I'm excited to sell for my business, to see the ripple effects of other people selling into their business. The impact of this podcast and being really intentional with my time around marketing this podcast. And so I'm really excited about this year because it feels like I'm not taking on these huge astronomical goals and these I have very intentional direction for my time, which feels like a lot of freedom as well. So my word for the year is impactful. So the first in is selling and exposure. So I need to get out and sell. I need to get out and sell for my business. I'm also do some sales consulting for another business. And so I need to get out and sell and be exposed. And, as I talk about in my course, selling is scary, mostly because you're opening yourself up to hearing rejection. And, being an entrepreneur is really scary because you are exposed. And so selling and exposure is something that is definitely in this year. Something that is out is imposter syndrome. It's kind of funny, but it's kind of not. But I was thinking about it with some of the cabinet picks of people who are, in my opinion, quite unqualified for the positions in which they are being nominated for. And if they're being nominated for those sorts of things, who the heck am I to doubt myself? So imposter syndrome is out. The next thing that is in is daily email checks. Email is one thing that tends to get away from me, that tends to make me spiral, that tends to sit in the back of my brain. And, if I am really intentional about selling as much and being impactful as much as I want to be, I have to be a better business owner about answering emails. It's something that I need to work on. And so that's why I'm bringing it in with daily email checks. And on top of that, the things that is out are procrastinating on the 5-minute activities. I know so many of you have been there where it's this thing that is sitting in the back of your head, oh shit, I have to do that. I have to do that. I have to do that. And we let it sit. For me, it just feels so heavy when I think about it. It physically feels like I can't take a breath because there's so many of these little things that are sitting in my head. And then I go and do that. And I'm like, that freaking took less than 5 minutes. That took 90 seconds to do. And I have been sitting and ruminating and feeling terrible about that activity for so long. And so really being intentional about time during my day to just say, are there 5-minute activities that I can knock out right now? I'm not going to be able to rid myself of procrastinating 100% because it's just who I am as a person. And I would be unrealistic by saying that I'm going to get rid of it altogether, but being really intentional about procrastinating on the small activities are something I think is attainable for me. And part of that is bringing in daily email checks. The next in is planning for what I can and releasing the rest. Because, this time of year, it's busy, but it's also like not. My spring is really, really busy. I coach my daughter's lacrosse team. She's now on a travel team. She's also in basketball. My husband is a coach, and I do the clock for his game. So, like, our spring is very overscheduled with lacrosse activities. So, like, March, April, May are a whirlwind for me. And I always go into that season like bracing for it. And then I feel like I spin out. And so I wanted to find a way to like give myself the space to take a breath during that, as far as like, I can't quite articulate it, but like meal prepping on Sundays, cool. And on a Wednesday, if we're coming home from a game and I don't have the energy to cook, stop by Burger King. That's cool too. Like, not having this like overwhelming burden of like, shit, I didn't plan well enough. I tried my best and here we are, and it is what it is. And so I want to like really bring in this like planning for what I can and releasing the rest. And so the other side of that, the out, is spiraling with overwhelm. I definitely like get overwhelmed during those seasons. Right now, I'm not super in overwhelm. I think part of that is like me having these really specific intentional activities that I can do in a shorter amount of time instead of like spreading myself so thin over all these things that I want to do. It's going to create some more calmness in my day to day. So the evenings where I am really busy with different activities with our family will feel less overwhelming because I'm not using as much bandwidth of my brain during the day because I'm like, okay, here's my activities, here's what I got to do. But I definitely, the past couple like springs have made me spiral with overwhelm. And some of that is related to like one of the ins is an abundance mindset, but also like I'm claiming abundance in money this year. Like I'm going to bring in good money this year and I'm excited about it. And part of like the spiraling with overwhelm is like, I can't go to Burger King. It's so expensive. Everything's so expensive. I have all this food at home. How am I going to spend money when like that sort of scarcity mindset is definitely out. And this is like let's strike a 70-30 balance. Like I'm going to have my brain go into scarcity because of who I am as a person, my anxiety, the life, the environment that we're in, the news, the world we live in. Society tends to foster a scarcity mindset more easily. And so can I just be an abundance mindset 70% of the time? Can I call in and quiet the overwhelm and the anxiety a little bit more? That's what I'm looking to do. And my last solely business in is I'm going to have fun selling. I have been listening to a lot of Jeffrey Gitmer and Fanatical Prospecting by Blount. And Jeffrey Gitmer has a podcast, which has been really entertaining to listen to. I've read a handful of his books throughout the years. I'm currently reading the Little Red Book of Selling, which is really good. And it's probably, I don't know, the seventh or eighth time I've read it. And there's also a sales podcast by Donald C. Kelly called The Sales Evangelist. I'm listening to that. And one of the big takeaways is like, let's just have fun. And so I'm really bringing in having fun selling because like, why do it any other way? Like, this is my business. I get to do it the way that I want, and let's have some fun while we do it. Another business in is going to be daily needle moving efforts. I talked about my word of the year being impactful. And so taking time to say, how can I move the needle forward today is going to be an intention of mine. And it can be like a 5-minute task. It can be an hour task, but it's about like, how am I creating impact? How am I moving the needle forward today? And the out that is associated with that is ATNA. And I heard this in Jeffrey Gitmer. His book I was just listening to on the way home yesterday, and it stands for All Talk, No Action. And I tend to be in my head so much. Another reason why journaling I think is going to really like elevate me this year is because I get in my own head and overthink things and then end up taking no action. And so the in is daily needle moving efforts, and the out is all talk, no action. So we've talked about business. Now let's get into a little bit more of the woo-woo, a little bit more personal. That being said, like when I am the healthiest, I show up better as a mother, as an entrepreneur, as a wife, as a friend, as a sister, as a homemaker, as myself. And so some of these are things that I'm doing for myself that will bleed into business as well. Okay. The first one that I want to talk about is journaling. And I put this down as business, but it's not, there are parts of it. Like, again, when I do things like journaling, that makes me a better overall person. It impacts all the different parts of my life. And I was doing some journaling the other day, and I was looking back, and like I did not do a lot of journaling in 2024. And I can feel it. Like it's one of those things that like I was so like here in my head. I'm sorry you can't see me on the podcast. I was so in my head in 2024. And in 2023, I did a lot of journaling, and I want to get back to that. And part of why that bleeds into business is because there are some creative projects that are in the writing realm that I want to start to pursue this year. And so journaling is partly for me and my mental health, and also for my business, because I think that it's going to lead to a lot of creativity. Okay. And so the out for that is doom scrolling. Again, just like I said with the abundance and scarcity, like I'm not going to cut that out of my life completely. Like the psychologists who have created parts of social media that are very addictive are really good at what they do. And so there is just to think that I'm just going to go cold turkey and never doom scroll ever again is setting myself up for failure. But can I be aware of it and step out of it more frequently? Yes. So we're leaving the frequency at which we doom scroll in 2024. So the next in for 2025 is a 10:30 bedtime. Again, I am my best self when I get enough sleep. So the out is I have been getting into bed between 11 p.m. and midnight, and that is not ideal because then it takes time to fall asleep, and that 6 a.m. alarm clock goes off quite early. And so let's just set it back like half an hour. Can we get into bed at 10:30? That would be ideal. And so in is a 10:30 bedtime, out is between 11 and midnight bedtime. One thing that worked really well for me this past year has been therapy and meds. Those are definitely staying in 2025. I have been going to therapy consistently now for, 2 or 3 months. And so I'm going to keep continuing to do that. And consistency with my meds has been helping. So we're going to bring that in. To go hand in hand with that, the thing that is staying in 2025 is grace. Giving myself grace. 2024 created a lot of grace for my brain and how it works. And I want to continue to do that for myself, for others around me, just finding grace in so many spaces because it just feels like, and so the out for that is shame. Should is a shame word. There is no good that can come out of shame. And the biggest person who gives myself shame is myself. Shame is like this garment that I tend to wear without even realizing it. And so being able to like take it off occasionally feels really nice. And so same thing as I have said before, like, am I going to be able to completely take shame out of my brain 100%? No. Can we take it out 5% more, 10% more? Let's do it. Let's try. And the last in for the year is movement. It has been something that has been on my mind for a long time. I have not, part of this goes hand in hand with like the shame and the overwhelm and all of those kind of negative narratives that I tend to let play in my head. But like the last time I had a really solid movement routine was before I gave birth to Rowan. Like I was doing CrossFit like 3 or 4 days a week up until I was like 38 weeks pregnant. Like I was very pregnant. And I just need to find ways that movement works back into my schedule that feels good. Because one of the things that I'm always like, oh, I should join a gym. I would actually love to do CrossFit again. I really enjoy that form of movement. I would definitely do it differently than I did like before having a family, because it was always like the heaviest weight I possibly could and, setting myself up for injury. And so it's less about like pushing my body to the max. It's more about like feeling strong in the movements that I'm taking. I'm always like, oh, I'm gonna, run a 5K because running is free. There are apps out there that you can do it. And the parts of exercise and movement that I love, the parts of what fulfill me as a person are not going outside and going for a, 3-mile run. That sounds horrible. Like I have never enjoyed running. The parts that I have enjoyed are the community parts, the like endorphins of like being in a room, all moving our body, sweating, feeling strong with community. And I don't get any of that when I go out for a run. But the scarcity thing was like, I can't afford to join a gym right now. And so it's been this battle of I want to join a gym. I want to find community and movement again, but I feel like I can't afford it. And so I'm going to do what I can afford, which is go out and run, which is miserable for me. And so then I don't do anything. And then I shame myself into like, I was a phys ed major. Like I understand deeply how impactful movement can be. And, I see older generations like struggling and I'm like, I can be doing something about that now. I was listening to a podcast recently where this woman was talking about how 40% of deaths are related to the day-to-day decisions that we make. And I feel like every day I'm choosing to not love my body and not move it through like love and support. And so I want to change that. And so I need to figure out a way to release like my scarcity mindset from movement because it really has been an impact on it. I spend money on a lot worse things than joining a gym. And so I just need to figure out how to make that work and how to move my body and feel strong and just love myself through movement again. So that is something that is in this year. Thank you for listening to the podcast today. I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear any of your ins and outs for the year. And if you could rate this podcast, that would mean the world to me. So until next time, remember that big dreams and small steps will transform your life.